I thought I was babysitting twins until I counted 3 kids in the house. The Caldwell family seemed perfect when I met them at the coffee shop downtown. Catherine Caldwell wore a crisp white blouse and had this warm smile that immediately put me at ease. Her husband David stood beside her, scrolling through his phone while she explained they needed a sitter for their 6-year-old twins, Oliver and Olivia. The pay was exceptional, $40 an hour for weekend evenings, and they lived just 15 minutes from my apartment. I'd been struggling to cover textbooks for my nursing program, so when Catherine slid a business card across the table with their address, I didn't hesitate. They wanted to start this Saturday, which gave me 3 days to prepare. Catherine texted me detailed instructions about bedtime routines, allergies neither twin had any, and emergency contacts. Everything felt professional and organized. She even sent photos of the twins, 2 blonde kids with matching dimples, so I'd recognize them easily. The house was a massive colonial on Evergreen Lane, the kind with a circular driveway and professionally landscaped gardens that probably cost more than my entire year's tuition. Saturday arrived, and I showed up at 6 p.m. sharp, clutching my backpack full of textbooks I planned to study once the kids were asleep. Catherine answered the door in an elegant black dress, pearl earrings catching the porch light. She ushered me inside quickly, heels clicking on the marble floor of the foyer. David was already in the car, she explained. They had reservations across town and were running late. The twins were in the playroom upstairs, second door on the left. She'd left pizza money on the kitchen counter, and her cell number was on the fridge. Before I could ask any questions, she was gone, the front door closing with a soft click that echoed through the enormous entryway. The house smelled like vanilla and expensive cleaning products, the kind of scent that screamed wealth. I found the kitchen easily, a sprawling space with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that gleamed under recessed lighting. A crisp $50 bill sat next to a note in Catherine's neat handwriting. Pizza place number in drawer. Kids like pepperoni. Back by 10 p.m. I climbed the curved staircase, my sneakers silent on the plush carpet runner. Family photos lined the wall, mostly the twins in various stages of childhood, beach vacations, birthday parties, school pictures with identical smiles. At the landing, I turned left and counted doors. Second one on the left stood slightly ajar, cartoon voices drifting into the hallway. I knocked gently and pushed it open. The playroom was huge, filled with more toys than any kids could possibly need. And there they were, 3 children sitting on the floor around a board game. I froze in the doorway, counting again to make sure I wasn't seeing things. 1, 2, 3 kids, all blonde, all around the same age. 2 girls in matching pink dresses and a boy in a blue polo shirt. They looked up at me with identical faces, same dimples, same blue eyes. My brain stuttered trying to process what I was seeing. "Hi," the boy said casually. "Are you Amy? Mom said you were coming." I managed to nod, my mouth suddenly dry. "I'm Oliver," he continued, pointing to himself, then gestured to the girls. "That's Olivia, and that's Ophelia." Ophelia. Catherine hadn't mentioned a 3rd child. I scanned the room for some explanation. Maybe a neighbor kid had come over to play, but the way they sat together felt permanent, familiar, like siblings who'd spent their whole lives in this room. "Your mom told me she had twins," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice steady. The 3 of them exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. "Oh," Olivia said, her voice eerily similar to her brother's. "Mom probably forgot to mention Ophelia. That happens sometimes." That happens sometimes? What kind of explanation was that? I pulled out my phone, thinking I'd text Catherine for clarification, but my screen showed no signal. That was strange. I'd had full bars in the driveway. I walked to the window, holding my phone up, watching the bars remain stubbornly absent. "Wi-Fi password?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Oliver rattled off a string of numbers and letters that I typed into my phone. "Password incorrect." "Are you sure that's right?" I asked. All 3 kids nodded in unison, that synchronized movement sending a chill down my spine. "Maybe try the one downstairs," Ophelia suggested. "It's different on each floor." Different Wi-Fi on each floor seemed excessive even for a house this size, but I filed that concern away with the growing list of oddities. "So, what game are you playing?" I asked, stepping closer to get a better look. The board was nothing I recognized. Hand-drawn paths connecting strange symbols, game pieces that looked handmade from clay. "It's called Three's Company," Oliver explained. "Ophelia invented it. Want to play?" I sat down cross-legged on the carpet, close enough to see their faces clearly. Now that I was looking properly, I could see tiny differences. Oliver had a small scar above his left eyebrow. Olivia's hair was slightly longer than Ophelia's, and Ophelia had a spattering of freckles across her nose that her sister lacked, but the resemblance was uncanny, far more similar than typical siblings. "How old are you guys?" I asked, picking up one of the clay pieces. It was cold, unnaturally so, like it had been in a freezer. "We're 6, they said together, that simultaneous response making me flinch. "All of you are 6? Same birthday?" They nodded again, those matching faces splitting into matching smiles. "Triplets." Catherine had said twins. Why would she lie about having triplets? Unless something was seriously wrong with one of the kids, some issue she didn't want to explain to a new babysitter. I tried my phone again. Still no signal. The Wi-Fi still refusing to connect. The pizza money sat downstairs on the counter, but suddenly the idea of calling for delivery felt impossible without a working phone. Are you guys hungry? I asked, standing up. My knees cracked, a reminder I'd been sitting in that anatomy lecture for 3 hours before coming here. We already ate, Olivia said. Mom fed us before she left. That seemed unlikely given the pizza money, but I wasn't going to argue with kids I'd known for 5 minutes. The playroom felt warmer than the rest of the house, almost stuffy, and I noticed the window was sealed shut, painted over at some point. Can we go outside? Oliver asked suddenly. To the backyard? We want to show you something. Evening was settling over the neighborhood, that golden hour before sunset, and the idea of fresh air sounded appealing after the stuffy playroom. Sure, I agreed. Let me just grab my jacket from downstairs. They bounded ahead of me, their footsteps surprisingly quiet on the stairs, despite their obvious excitement. I followed more slowly, still trying to shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in my chest, since counting 3 kids instead of 2. The kitchen was exactly as I'd left it, $50 bill and note undisturbed. I checked the landline mounted on the wall by the refrigerator. Dead. No dial tone at all. My unease shifted toward something closer to concern. I was in a stranger's house with 3 kids, no way to contact anyone, and a detail about the number of children that didn't match what I'd been told. But Catherine and David seemed so normal, so professional. There had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe Ophelia was a foster child they were in the process of adopting. Maybe she was a relative staying with them. I grabbed my jacket from where I'd draped it over a kitchen chair and headed toward the back door where the kids were waiting. The backyard was enormous, easily an acre, with a wooden fence that seemed unnecessarily tall, at least 8 feet, blocking any view of the neighboring properties. A swing set sat in the far corner, the kind from expensive catalogs with a slide and climbing wall. But the kids weren't heading toward the swing set. They were walking toward a small building near the back fence, something between a shed and a small house, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, with a single window and a door painted bright red. What's that? I asked, following them across the perfectly manicured lawn. Our playhouse, Ophelia said, running ahead. Dad built it last summer. She reached the door and pulled it open, disappearing inside. Oliver and Olivia waited for me, their expressions eager, excited. Come on, Oliver urged. You have to see the inside. Every instinct I had was screaming not to go into that shed, but I was the adult here, responsible for these kids. If they were playing in there regularly, I needed to know it was safe. I ducked through the doorway, blinking as my eyes adjusted to the dim interior. The space was furnished like a tiny apartment, a small bed in one corner, a bookshelf crammed with children's books, a table with crayons and coloring books spread across its surface, and covering every inch of the walls, hundreds of drawings, all clearly done by children. I stepped closer to examine them. Most showed 3 stick figures, 2 with long hair, 1 with short hair, always holding hands. In every picture, the 3 figures stood together, but off to the side, apart from them, were 2 larger stick figures. In some drawings, the large figures had X's over their faces. In others, they were simply missing their heads. We draw in here a lot, Ophelia said from behind me, making me jump. I hadn't heard her move. Do you like them? I studied the drawings more carefully, noticing details I'd missed at first glance. Numbers written in corners, dates going back months, almost a year, calculations in a child's handwriting, crude addition and subtraction, counting something. What are you counting? I asked, pointing to a drawing dated 6 months ago, the number 142 written in red crayon at the bottom. Days, Oliver said simply. We count the days. Before I could ask what that meant, a sound echoed from the main house. A door opening. Footsteps. That's weird, Olivia whispered. Mom and Dad aren't supposed to be back until 10. My watch showed 7:30 p.m. I pulled out my phone again, uselessly. Still no signal. The footsteps were getting closer, crossing the kitchen from the sound of it, heading toward the back door. Maybe we should go say hi, I suggested, suddenly desperate to talk to Catherine, to get explanations for everything that felt wrong about this situation. But the kids had gone completely still, their faces drained of color. That's not Mom, Ophelia breathed, her voice barely a whisper. That's not Dad. The back door of the house opened and a figure stepped onto the patio. Even from this distance, even in the fading light, I could see it wasn't Catherine or David. This person was shorter, broader, wearing dark clothes and moving with deliberate purpose across the lawn toward us. Inside the house, I said urgently, grabbing Oliver's hand, but he pulled away. No, all 3 kids said together. We hide here. We always hide here. The figure was halfway across the lawn now, and I could hear their breathing, heavy and ragged. I pulled the playhouse door shut and flipped the small lock, a flimsy thing that wouldn't hold against any real force. The kids crowded behind me, and I could feel them trembling. Through the small window, I watched the figure approach. When they stepped into the light spilling from the main house, I got a clear look at their face. It was Catherine, but something was wrong with her, fundamentally wrong. Her makeup was smeared, her elegant dress torn at the shoulder. Her eyes had a wild, unfocused quality, and she was holding something in her right hand. A knife. Not a kitchen knife. Something longer, more deliberate. She walked past the playhouse without stopping, heading toward the back fence, and I watched her examine it carefully, running her free hand along the boards like she was looking for something. "What's happening?" I whispered to the kids, but they were fixated on Catherine, tracking her movements with the intensity of prey animals watching a predator. She turned suddenly, her head tilting at an unnatural angle, and looked directly at the playhouse. At me, visible through the window. A smile spread across her face, but it was all wrong, too wide, showing too many teeth. She started walking toward us, that knife catching the last rays of sunlight. I fumbled for my phone, stupidly, knowing it wouldn't work, and that's when Oliver grabbed my wrist. His small hand was ice cold. "She can't come in here," he said quietly. "The red door. She can't cross the red door." It sounded like something from a fairy tale, magical thinking that wouldn't hold up against reality, but the kids seemed so certain. Catherine reached the door and stopped, exactly as Oliver predicted. Her hand reached out toward the red paint, but pulled back before making contact, like she'd touched something hot. "Amy," she called, her voice syrupy sweet, nothing like the professional woman from the coffee shop. "Amy, dear, please come out. I need to talk to you about the children." I pressed my back against the wall, trying to slow my breathing. "Mrs. Caldwell, are you okay?" I called back, hoping I sounded calmer than I felt. "I'm perfect," she said, that wrong smile still plastered across her face. "Just perfect. But I need you to send the children out. All three of them. It's very important." Ophelia's hand found mine, her grip surprisingly strong. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't." Catherine's smile faltered, that mask of sweetness cracking. "The children need to come back to the main house now," she said, her voice taking on a harder edge. "This game has gone on long enough." "Game? What game?" I looked down at the three kids huddled around me, their faces reflecting pure terror. These weren't kids playing make-believe. They were genuinely afraid. "Why don't you tell me what's really going on?" I said to Catherine, trying to keep her talking, stalling for time while I figured out what to do. "Where's David?" Her laugh was harsh, brittle. "David's where he always is. Useless. But that's fine. I can handle this myself. I've handled it before." She raised the knife, examining it in the dying light. "Did you know we had triplets, Amy? Beautiful triplets. Oliver, Olivia, and Ophelia. Such perfect names. Such perfect children." The way she said "had" made my blood run cold. "They're right here," I said carefully. "All three of them. They're fine." "No," Catherine said, and for a moment, something human flickered in her eyes, something like anguish. "No, they're not fine. They should have stayed two. Twins are acceptable, manageable. But three? Three is chaos. Three is wrong. Three needs to be corrected." Corrected. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. I thought about those drawings, the stick figures with X's over their faces, the numbers counting days. "How long have they been hiding from you?" I asked. Catherine's face twisted into something ugly. 86 days, she hissed. "Since I tried to fix it. Since I tried to make things right. But they locked themselves in here with their magic door and their rules, and I can't reach them. But you can, Amy. You can send them out. Just one of them. Just Ophelia. The extra one. That's all I need." My mind raced, trying to piece together what she was saying. She'd tried to kill Ophelia 86 days ago. The kids had been living in this playhouse for almost 3 months, hiding from their own mother, and the red door somehow kept her out. None of it made sense, but the knife in her hand was real enough. "Mrs. Caldwell, I think you need help," I said gently. "Why don't you go back inside and I'll call someone who can—" "You can't call anyone," she interrupted, her smile returning. "We made sure of that. No signal. No landline. David handled the technical details before I handled David." Handled David. The implication was clear, and ice flooded my veins. "Where is your husband?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. "In the basement," she said cheerfully. "Resting. He'll be fine once this is over. Once we're back to 2. 2 is perfect. 2 is balanced. 3 throws everything off." I glanced down at the kids. They were holding each other, tears streaming down their faces, but staying absolutely silent. They'd heard all of this before, I realized. This wasn't the first time Catherine had come to the door with a knife and madness in her eyes. "How have you been surviving out here?" I whispered to them. "The window in back," Oliver breathed. "Dad leaves food there when Mom's asleep, but we haven't seen him in 3 days. 3 days. No food, no water. These kids were literally starving while their mother stalked them with a knife. My nursing instincts kicked in, overriding my terror. They needed help, professional help, and I was the only adult available who wasn't actively trying to kill someone. "Catherine," I called out, using her first name deliberately, trying to establish some connection. "Let's talk about this reasonably. You're obviously under a lot of stress. Having triplets must have been overwhelming." Her eyes focused on me with laser intensity. "You don't understand," she said, her voice dropping to something almost conversational. "I tried. For 6 years I tried to love all 3 equally. But every time I looked at Ophelia, all I could see was the mistake. The genetic anomaly. The egg that split wrong. 2 was supposed to be enough. 2 made sense. But 3? She shook her head. 3 meant something was wrong with me. Wrong with my body. And I couldn't live with that anymore. The casual way she talked about murdering her own child made bile rise in my throat. I'd studied psychology as part of my nursing program, knew about postpartum psychosis, about maternal mental health crises, but this felt different, more calculated. This was a woman who'd been planning this for months, maybe years. What about David? I asked. Doesn't he love all 3 kids? Her laugh was sharp as broken glass. David was weak. He said we should get help, said I needed to see a doctor. He didn't understand that I don't need fixing. The situation needs fixing. One less child, and everything goes back to normal. I thought about David in the basement, wondered if he was still alive, if there was any chance of reaching him, getting him to help. But Catherine stood between us and the house, and that knife wasn't going anywhere. The sun had fully set now, and the backyard was sliding into darkness. Motion sensor lights clicked on, bathing the lawn in harsh white light that made Catherine's shadow stretch toward us like a reaching hand. You know what the really funny part is? Catherine said conversationally, like we were having coffee instead of a hostage negotiation. The school thinks there are only 2 of them. When we registered them for kindergarten last year, I only enrolled Oliver and Olivia. Ophelia technically doesn't exist. No school records, no doctor's appointments since she was 2. She's a ghost child. If she disappeared, no one would even know to look for her. Beside me, Ophelia made a small sound, quickly stifled. I squeezed her hand, trying to offer some comfort. That's not true, I said firmly. I know about her now, and if anything happens to these kids, I'll make sure everyone knows. Catherine's smile faded. Will you, though? Or will you just become another problem that needs solving? The threat was clear. I wasn't just a babysitter anymore. I was a witness. Someone who could expose what Catherine had been doing. My phone was useless, the landline dead, and I was locked in a shed with 3 starving children while a woman with a knife stood outside contemplating whether to add me to her body count. I needed a plan. Some way to get past Catherine and into the house, to find David, to call for help. But the playhouse had only one door, and Catherine was standing right in front of it. There's a loose board in the back, Olivia whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. Near the floor. We used to use it to get food from Dad. I glanced toward the back wall. In the harsh shadows cast by the motion lights, I could barely make out what she was talking about, but I nodded. Can you fit through it? I breathed. All 3 kids nodded. Okay, I said, my mind racing. When I say go, you 3 squeeze through that board and run. Run to a neighbor's house, any house with lights on. Bang on the door and scream for help. Don't stop running until you're inside someone else's house. Understand? They nodded again, their faces solemn. What about you? Oliver asked. I looked at the door, at Catherine's shadow on the ground outside. I'm going to make sure she doesn't follow you. It was a terrible plan, likely to end with me getting stabbed, but these kids had been trapped for 86 days, and I wasn't about to let that continue. I looked around the playhouse for anything I could use as a weapon. The table was too heavy to lift quickly. The chair was small, meant for children. My eyes landed on the bookshelf in the corner. On 3, I whispered. 1, 2, I didn't say 3. Instead, I grabbed the bookshelf and threw my weight against it, sending it crashing into the door. Books and toys exploded outward, and the door burst open, catching Catherine off guard. She stumbled backward, and I launched myself through the opening before she could recover. I hit her in the chest with my shoulder, and we both went down, rolling across the grass. I heard the knife skitter away across the lawn, lost in the darkness. Behind me, I heard small feet running, the sound of wood splintering as the kids forced their way through the loose board. Run! I screamed, grappling with Catherine. She was stronger than she looked, fueled by whatever madness had taken hold of her. Her hands found my throat, squeezing, and spots danced in my vision. I drove my knee up into her stomach, and her grip loosened enough for me to suck in a breath. We rolled again, and my hand touched something cold and metal, the knife. I grabbed it, holding it between us. Not sure if I could actually use it, but hoping the threat would be enough. Catherine went still, her eyes fixed on the blade. You don't understand, she panted. They're my children. You have the right to get help. I cut her off. You have the right to be a mother who protects her kids, not hunts them. Tears were streaming down her face now, but her expression remained twisted, caught between grief and rage. I just wanted to, she sobbed. Is that so wrong? To want what I planned for? To want what I can handle? I kept the knife steady, my hands shaking. In the distance, I could hear shouts, the sound of doors opening. The kids must have reached the neighbors. Help was coming. I just had to keep Catherine here, keep her from going after them until someone arrived. It's over, I said quietly. Whatever you were planning, it's over now. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the moment something broke inside her. Her whole body went slack, and she started laughing, a high, hysterical sound that made my skin crawl. Over, she repeated. Yes, I suppose it is. She looked toward the main house. You should check on David. Basement, like I said, though I don't think talking will do much good anymore. Sirens were wailing now, getting closer. Red and blue lights flickered across the fence line. I got to my feet carefully, keeping the knife pointed at Catherine, though she didn't seem interested in fighting anymore. She just lay there on the grass, staring up at the darkening sky, tears running down into her hair. Police swarmed into the backyard seconds later, and hands pulled me away from Catherine, took the knife, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders even though I wasn't cold. I watched them handcuff her, watched her go without resistance, still wearing that torn black dress and that broken expression. An officer led me toward the house. The kids said their father is in the basement, he said. Do you know anything about that? I shook my head. She said she handled him. That's all I know. We found David in the basement, and for a moment I thought we were too late. He was tied to a chair, duct tape over his mouth, blood dried on his temple where he'd been hit. But when the officer checked his pulse, his eyes fluttered open. He was alive. Barely, but alive. I sat on the back patio while EMTs worked on David, while officers took statements from neighbors who'd called 911 when 3 screaming children had banged on their doors. The kids were already gone, taken to the hospital for evaluation, but a detective sat down beside me with a notepad. We need your statement, she said gently. Start from the beginning. So I did. I told her about the coffee shop meeting, about Catherine mentioning twins, about arriving to find 3 children instead of 2, about the playhouse with its red door and its drawings counting days, about Catherine and the knife and the 86 days the kids had been hiding. The detective's expression grew darker with every word. The playhouse, she said when I finished. You said something about a red door keeping her out? I nodded, though it sounded insane saying it out loud. The kids said she couldn't cross it, and she didn't. She stood right outside but wouldn't touch the door. The detective glanced toward the small building, now swarming with crime scene techs taking photographs. Kids believe in a lot of things when they're scared, she said carefully. Magical thinking is common in trauma, but the reality is probably simpler. The door locked from the inside, and Catherine couldn't break it down without tools. The red paint is just paint. Maybe. But I'd seen Catherine's hand pull back from that door like it burned her. I'd seen the certainty in the kids' faces. Some things didn't have rational explanations, and maybe that was okay. Maybe it was enough that it kept them alive for 86 days. A week later, I visited the kids at their temporary foster home, all 3 of them together, because the social worker said separating them would cause more trauma after everything they'd been through. They looked better, cleaner, fed, the bruised look of starvation fading from their faces. Dad's out of the hospital, Oliver told me. They said we might get to see him next month, when he's better. And Mom? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. The kids exchanged glances. Mom's going to be gone for a long time, Olivia said quietly. The doctors say she's sick, not the kind of sick that gets better quickly. Ophelia climbed into my lap, something she never would have done that first night, and hugged me tight. Thank you for not sending me out, she whispered. Thank you for keeping me. I held her close. This little girl who'd been erased from records, hidden from the world, marked for death by her own mother. You were never extra, I told her firmly. You were never a mistake. You're exactly who you're supposed to be. Before I left, Oliver showed me a new drawing he'd made. 3 stick figures holding hands, but this time there were no crossed-out faces in the background. Just 3 kids standing together, and off to the side, a 4th figure, a babysitter with curly hair and glasses. Me. For keeping us safe, he said, handing it to me. I kept that drawing, framed it, hung it in my apartment where I could see it every day. It reminded me that sometimes the job we think we're signing up for isn't the job we end up doing. Sometimes we're called to do more, to be more than we ever imagined. The Caldwell case made local news for a few weeks. Woman arrested for attempted murder of her own daughter, husband nearly killed, children found living in backyard playhouse. Mental health experts gave sound bites about postpartum psychosis, about the pressure of multiple births, about warning signs everyone had missed. But they didn't know about the 86 days. They didn't know about the red door. They didn't know about 3 kids who'd survived by counting days and believing in the magic of a color. David eventually regained custody, moved the kids to a different state, started over somewhere Catherine could never find them. He sent me a card last Christmas, a photo of all 3 kids smiling on a beach somewhere warm, Ophelia right in the middle where she belonged. No more hiding, no more counting days, just 3 kids being kids. Sometimes late at night, I still think about that evening, about knocking on the playroom door expecting twins and finding triplets, about the drawings counting days, about Catherine with her knife and her terrible logic, about how close we came to everything ending differently. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.